Here is another first question. Castaneda mentioned that when the will is being revived in a male person, that person would have many months of convulsions. And are there any other physical characteristics according to which a human person can understand that it's the will is being born?
Okay, yeah. It's a complicated question, it seems. Okay. All right. Carlos Castaneda used the word will in his very earliest books, like probably the first 3 or 4 books. Elena, am I supposed to wait for you to translate, right? Okay, I'll just keep on going. Okay, and thereafter he changed the word will to power in the next several books. And then after that he changed the word will to power to energy body to acquiescence. What is important is when we are starting out in tensegrity, these are very often, the early books of Carlos Castaneda appeal to us because they are kind of the same level that we're at in our own evolution of consciousness. And so when we're asking a question about will, this does have a lot to still do with our ego, with our identity, with I am going to want something and desire something and I am going to make it happen. As you evolve in consciousness, this will, it is not so me generated anymore. It is it generated, or spirit energy generated, or infinity generated. And what you find is at the end of your life, you will go from ego, will, I'm going to do this path, to instead, I am going to acquiesce to spirit. So, as described in the earlier books of Carlos, possibly when he's having some convulsions, etc., or some of the other male practitioners were having convulsions, this is a description of letting go of the ego. Women have the ego, men have the ego, everybody on this planet has got one. You men are not alone. You don't have to fight this battle by yourself. So, it's just that when anybody lets go of their ego, it is a mind-altering, a life-altering moment. For some of us who are very, very attached with the way we currently see the world, that's going to be dramatic. For others of us that already have an insinuation that the world and I are one, that the world and I share consciousness, that the world and I, there's no separation, and that I can feel this lack of separation when I let go of my ego. For the person that already intuits that already knows that, letting go of the ego is nothing. It is not convulsing on the floor. It is not running amok. It will not make you crazy. It's just an ease, an acquiescence into that which already exists. All tensegrity is attempting for you to do is get out of this very structured mindset that we're in and embrace that what already is. Our oneness with everything around us, our oneness with every human being, every plant, every animal, every tree, every stone, every rock, every bird, etc. This is a shamanic journey, a journey from me, to the multiplicity of infinity itself. And as I become conscious of the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, so does infinity. So, I hope that answered that question.
Dear Rennie,
Okay? Yes.
Rennie, we can
Yes.
go to the lecture part,
Okay,
and
that's
Scott
good.
will translate via TeamSpeak, and you can talk about 20 minutes.
Cool. Well, I'll do that. Okay, I'm getting the okay that now I can talk, and then we'll answer questions after my talk. So as you know, my name is Renata Mورز, and I'm very happy to invite you into my home. And I really, really, really am moved by that video of Sudok that they showed at the beginning of this webinar, and I hope some of you were able to see it on your screens, because it really talks to the message of my small lecture, and that is coming home. Every time I see those images of Sudok, to my knowledge, I don't have any relatives. But I must have relatives from there. Because every time I see those images, I feel like I have come home. When I was a child, I had normal, confusing childhood. And where I got my relief, where I got to expand my wings, was always outside. I was lucky enough to have parents who were able to afford a small house on a big yard. And in that yard were tremendous trees. In one of the yards, the tree was not meant for climbing, and the branches were so high, my little small self couldn't reach it. But my parents bought me one of those climby things for children, made out of iron, and it has a big structure, and you can swing on it. And I climbed up to the very top, and when I was at the very top, I could sit. The branches of the trees would just envelop me, and I would sit there, and I would be encased in the trees, and I felt like I could be my full self. I didn't think anyone could see me, but of course they could. And I thought that I could see everything as far as the land could see. But what I mostly felt in myself was an expansion. When I was with those trees, something came out of my little human form. Something came out and resonated out here. I expanded. It's almost as if my energetic field expanded to the limitations of my luminous egg, even though at the time I didn't know what a luminous egg was. It was just a feeling, and I did it often. I did it a lot. Other houses we lived in also had trees. There was one tree I remember, a huge magnolia tree. Oh my gosh, 50 feet tall. That one was for climbing. And I would climb up and I would sit in the top branches and I would just rest there for hours. I'd watch all the cars on the street go by. I'd watch all the people go by. And again, I would expand and feel my complete self. As life always does, life has a way of pulling our attention away from the sublime, away from the natural, into more social attributes. Of course, I was interested in dating. Of course, I was interested in a job. Of course, became interested in getting married. All those things filled my attention and took the place of my feeling at home. When I got married, however, and I had chosen wisely a man who was also liking of spirituality, he and I went on spiritual questing together. And We went to South America and tried the schools there, and tried dancing schools and movement schools and meditation schools. We went to Asia and tried the schools there, and all the Kali schools and the meditating of color schools and the goddesses and the many faces of the ego schools. And we tried Native American schools and all the ceremonies and all the sweat lodges and all the healing circles and all the pipe ceremonies and all the etc. And I didn't know what I was looking for then, but I was looking for a return to home. And oddly, with all that searching, I didn't find it. As relationships go, my marriage ended. And a couple weeks later, I met Carlos Castaneda. And the first time he taught us tensegrity, or us as in myself and the people that were with me at the time, was out in a park, on the grass, next to these really gorgeous trees. And there was about 30 of us. And as soon as I did those movements, it took me about 20 minutes, that feeling of growing, of sensing myself larger than myself, of extending myself, the fullness of myself began again. And I ended that class, it was only an hour, feeling so round and so full, and so my complete self. It was each and every one of those experiences that I had with tensegrity movements and tensegrity recapitulation that it always made me come home to my fuller self, my complete self, that made me stay in tensegrity. And that has made me stay in tensegrity. Because to this day, that feeling comes back again and again. When Carlos was still with us, he would have small lectures interspersed with movement, and he would meet us a couple times a week. And he would say to the group, or he would say to any one of us, you know, Cholo, you are more than you think you are. You are more than you think you are. That sentence at the beginning didn't mean anything to me. I'm sure all of you would love to believe that when I was with Carlos, that I was hanging on his every word, that I was absorbing everything he said. And yet, my ego, and all of our egos were so in the way, that all of his dreaming and all of his wisdom was put in us. But it bypassed the ego, and it was put in our energy body. So it took me years to retrieve this wholeness of myself, this awareness of my energy body myself, and the wisdom of Carlos Castaneda finally came to light. And what he was talking about was something that the ancient Seers knew or know, but that modern man has somehow forgotten. Because our lineage stretches back tens of thousands of years before Christ, our lineage is capable of relaying to all of life and consciousness around us as multiple. This means that I don't have just one identity I call myself Rennie Mores. Society likes to make me have an identity. Oh, I like to wear the color blue. I like cats. I like a certain car. I think certain thoughts. I eat certain foods. I have certain habits, and all of these describe a certain identity, a singular identity called Renata Mores. That is what society has trained me to think and feel and be. Whereas when I step into this coming home feeling, into the fullness of myself, that identity that society has given me is but one piece of myself. It's not the majority player anymore, because I realize then that I am so much more. In tensegrity, we sense, feel, believe, understand that spirit, or the vaster consciousness, has imbued consciousness into every life form on this planet, whether that's an insect, whether that's a plant, whether it's a human being. Human beings may want to think we're the highest life form. So what? But we are not the only life form with consciousness. And because we human beings have been through all the stages of evolution to make this composite of physicality and DNA, we are within us the same elementals of rock and tree, plant and stone, flower, turtle, bird, wolf, and human being. By the very nature of our biology, we are already multiple. By the fact that we are natural shamans, we can become conscious of all these things because we have all these things inside of ourselves. And our consciousness of these things inside of ourselves can then relate to the consciousness of similar things outside of ourselves. So, this idea of oneness, this idea of, maybe not oneness, but singularity, one way of being, identity that society has given us, it began further past, further in history than many of you understand. From the Judeo-Christian religion, it is understood that the Jewish believed in multiple gods and that Jesus Christ was the first to hypothesize or feel or sense or bring into consciousness this idea of a single God. And that's not exactly true. In Egypt, before Christ was born, there was a king who was a seer, rather a revolutionary. His name was Akhenaten. Akhenaten lived in a polytheistic world. Akhenaten's people prayed to Bath and Ra, the falcon and the cat gods, to the gods of winds, to the god of rain, to the god of lands, to the female goddess, and the male warrior inside. But Akhenaten thought there would be a better way of doing this. So he moved the capital of Egypt to a new location and set up new temples. And these new temples were to a single God. It is hypothesized by Judeo-Christian theologians that Jesus Christ, when he was young, running from the idolatry of the Roman Empire, when he and his family went to Egypt, that they went to this place of Akhenaten and his singular deity. In Egypt, however, Tutankhamun, which was Akhenaten's son, didn't like this singular god. He went back to polytheism. But the Western world, through the teachings of some religions, have adopted one being and one consciousness, one supreme consciousness over all. That's a perfect way to believe if that suits you. But for Seers, another way to believe is the one that I explained to you, which was, I am a piece of infinity. Infinity is multiple. It is so vast, it is not one being. It is a composite of many pieces. And as I recognize those composite of pieces within myself and can touch those composites of pieces and recognize them outside myself, then I tune into infinity. Infinity gains consciousness for itself. For me, this feeling of fullness, my multiplicity of being, my connection with Spirit, is what Tensegrity hopes to give each and every human being. And when I saw those images at the beginning of this webinar of Sudok, immediately my fullness and multiplicity of being just came out. Because often, in those places unyet explored by a lot of humanity, big cities, a lot of freeways, that's where we can feel infinity again. That's where we can feel our unitedness to all around us. That's where we can feel our fullness, our completeness, and come home to ourselves. Of course, you can come home to yourself in your house, in a building, in your office. But once in a while, it's really nice to go back in nature and just find that wonder, that moment in which you were created, where you were a piece of it all. And that your ego is just a fleck of dust. So, I think I've talked enough for a while. I've talked about coming home. I've talked about tensegrity. I've talked a little about Sudok. So I think now's the time to open it for questions. And I'm here to open up for questions about anything in tensegrity, about the upcoming workshop, about Carlos Castaneda, anything I can be of service to you with. So either Elena or Ascot, let me know how this goes from here. I wish I could read all this Russian chat and I could tell you what's going on, but I can't. Oh my.
Well, Rainy, the first question is, how did Carlos Castaneda live?
Oh gosh, I'm asked that question a million times and I've given that answer a million times. Okay, would all of you make a promise that all of you who hear this answer tell at least one other person this answer, please? Okay. As we know, Carlos Castaneda wrote his book in 1968, his first book, Teachings of Don Juan. And we know that he had been an apprentice of Don Juan for some years before that. Carlos did not meet Don Juan when he was 20 years old or 19. He met him a little bit later in life. And possibly that's why Carlos took Don Juan's teachings so seriously and so to heart. But anyway, in 1978, Carlos Castaneda was supposed to leave. He was in Mexico. A blue light came through the window and started burning his toe, his left toe. It was going to burn him up. He was going to burn from within. And yet, he knew he didn't have any apprentices. He'd been looking for them for years and none of them stuck. None of them stayed. He'd been attempting to teach them just like Don Juan had taught him. And he goes, I can't leave. I can't leave. I cannot leave this world without giving this gift to more people than myself. He wanted to give this gift of tensegrity to more people than himself. So he stamped out his footsie. He used to tell this story so often to us. Stamped out his footsie. He had a scar on his foot ever since. And it was the most unusual scar. His toenail never grew again. It was dead. It had already burned. The whole tip of his toe was completely black, like a charred body. Anyway, he stayed for many, many years. And during that time in 1988, Carol Tiggs came back. Carol Tiggs and Carlos united with Florinda and Taisha were the ones that realized that tensegrity practitioners need the movements. That just a single teacher was not going to be enough, because a single teacher, you have to be in the presence of the single teacher over and over and over again to kind of play with their energy field, to get in their energy field, to even understand what they're talking about. But when you leave the presence of a teacher, you don't remember a thing, because you're borrowing and living and existing for moments on their energy. Carlos and Carol and Taisha and Florinda goes, the only way you're ever going to get apprentices is if you bring out the movements that Don Juan taught us. Whoa. How did that slip Carlos's mind? So they brought out the movements. It completely invigorated all of us. Carlos made videos. Carlos started the workshops after that. Carol and Taisha and Florinda were at the workshops. And during this time, between 1978 and 1998, when he died, or when he left, Carlos contracted liver cancer. Very simple. He wasn't supposed to be here. He stayed for us. As a Nawal, he never went to doctors. As a Nawal, he stayed alive many, many, many years, recirculating his energy. Until again it was time to leave. He knew that if he stomped out his foot in Mexico, in that hotel room, in 1978, that he would have to leave, not by burning within. He gave that up for tensegrity. And so he did leave. He did die. But he didn't die a normal death where disease just overwhelms you and you gasp your last breath and, I want to live some more. No. He moved his energy. He took his energy out of his living form, transferred it to his energy form, and disappeared. And this lay dead. A lot of people ask me the question, wow, does a warrior have to burn from within to reach infinity? Not at all. You can leave any way you want. The point is, can you leave by your own design and your own will? Or can you leave at the time that Spirit wishes you to will. So that's the story of Carlos's departure. And also the explanation that no, you don't have to burn from within in order to leave. A lot of people ask me, well, maybe Carlos didn't make it up there, or wherever there is. And I always tell people the same thing. If you have an ancestor, a grandparent, a great-grandparent that's dead, try closing your eyes, reaching into silence, and call them. Call them. See if you can find them out there. You might, and let me tell you, their consciousness will be this big. Then, get into silence and call Carlos. Call the Nawal. And he will come as an umbrella of consciousness that envelops your whole being. So, did Carlos make it? Oh, most certainly did. Because there's nothing out there that can give me that. So, Scott, maybe we have another question? So then all of you tell one person that story, please. So I don't have to tell the same story over and again. Next question, Ashat?
Эту историю не повторял ее несколько раз. Okay, next question. Castaneda mentioned that... Нет, конвульсия это уже... sorry, this question we already had. Question number 2. Oh, again, will question. I think we already answered that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, what is love of affection of sorcerers? Love of sorcerers, what is it?
Okay.
I am interested because well, Reni, perhaps this is a second question or the continuation of the first one, so let me read it to you. I'm interested why we are going to do that, because Don Juan forbade to walk along Mexican broken buildings, and we still walk there, and not only walk, but we also do some practices of dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps
Also,
this is
it's a different question.
3. I think yes, this is different. Okay.
Okay. All you lovely people listening to this webinar, I think for the sake of the translators, if you could put question number 1, question number 2, question number 3. Okay. So I think the first question was, what was love? Or how do seers define love? I think that's where we were. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to answer that one. All right. So we know what courtship is. We know what love is in our social sphere. It's it's finding another human being that completes me. Love that you asked this question after I already gave the lecture about being complete all by myself, with me and my energy body and me and my expansiveness, and now you're going to ask me a question about love. So, the way, again, that society loves is I love another person because they complete me. Not because my energy and myself complete me, but another person completes me. Together, we are the yin and yang. We are duality. We are male and female. We can be right or wrong. We can be black and white. We are duality. And for many of us, that's where our love goes. That's how we define love. And then we have love for our parents. And then we have love for our children. But very, very often, it is the kind of love where I am kind of separate and I'm embracing another separate being who's not complete unto themselves. In a seer's love, however, is I'm a complete human being. I have my physical body and my energy body. And I meet another human being who also knows that they have a physical body and an energy body. And when we meet and when we choose to be together, it is not a fulfillment of my soul. It is not a fulfillment of me marrying the kind of person that my family wants me to marry. It's not a fulfillment of the feeling that I am empty unless I find my other half. No. I already have my other half. I already am complete. And when a complete being meets another complete being, their completeness overlaps in the middle and makes a third. In situations like that, you create a third, whether that be a child, whether that be a project, whether that be a home, whether that be a relationship, whether that be a love of art or music. But you create a third thing out of two complete beings. From human to human, this is love. So I'm not quite sure I sensed that the question about love was about human to human love. So that's why I answered that question. But also, as I explained earlier, a seer in his fullness has a sense of connection, love and affection to everything around them because we're all together, we're all a piece of each other. So I hope that answered your question of love. But for a seer, I'm already complete before I loved. And for my socialized self, I am incomplete before I love. Maybe as Scott, we want to ask the second question, which is about going to sacred places. Okay, well, I'll answer that one. Okay.
Yes, Rennie. Yes.
Anyway.
Number two.
Is a sacred places one? Okay, yeah. Okay, one of you asked, why do we go to sacred places? Because Carlos took us to sacred places. Again, please, many of your questions are from the early books. The early books is not Carlos as on a wall. From the art of dreaming, to the magical passes, to the active side of infinity, these are the books of Carlos as a full and complete being as in a wall. But yet many of our questions come from the early books, which don't really describe Carlos anymore. They describe where he was 40 years ago. So, at a certain point in Carlos's evolution from normal human to being in the wall, it was not safe for him to go to these places. And Don Juan told him so. He had a habit of going with Nestor and Pablito. They had a habit of not going always in a sacred way, possibly, etc. So these places became dangerous because Carlos didn't know how to handle himself in them. But when we were apprentices, Carlos took us all over Mexico. Took us to the Yucatan, he took us to Tula, he took, etc., etc. He took us to see the Olmecs and heads. He took us all these places. Again, to feed our multiplicity, to feed us, that we could garner and gather the beginnings of our lineage into ourselves. What happens every time you go on a tour to Mexico is Mexico takes a piece of your ego away from you. Something you want to get rid of anyway, something you're ready to get rid of. It stays there in Mexico. And in its place, it gives you a piece of the lineage. It makes an exchange with you. So, we go to Mexico now. It is not a danger for us because we go in the ways that Carlos taught us how to go. Also, at the end of every day of every tour, we do a ceremony which cleanses you off so that you can safely go back into your own world, not carrying anything that may be detrimental to you. We know how to go to these places. We know how to visit in solemnity, in sacredness, and in wisdom. So, I think, Scott, I need a question 3.
Well, question 3. Ой. Так, question. Okay. When I try to stop my internal dialogue, I focus on my physical body, but after 30-40 minutes, memories from the past start to come. My initial intent is to stop my internal dialogue. How to prevent that and to stop the dialogue?
Okay, kind person, are you a male or a female?
А вы парень или женщина? Мужчина или женщина? Вот напишите. He's a male. He's a male.
He's a male. Okay, great. Are you right-handed?
Ты правша? Yes.
Okay. You have a particular brain that
У тебя есть особый
has
мозг.
have a corpus callosum down the middle that is not linked to each other. For you, when you go to silence, you go to right brain. When you go to normal talky self, you go to left brain. For you, when you're in the dream space or you're in the silence, etc., it's rather you have no words to describe what's going on. You're just in this moment, you're just in this feeling. And then as soon as you go back to the talky side of yourself, then you're okay. Just so that you know that there are differences in the world, men who are left-handed and all women have a corpus callosum which is crossed, meaning that we go into silence talking to ourselves. For women and left-handed men, our silence, if we are talking to ourselves, is not about us. It's about everything around us. Okay? So for left-handed men and women, our silence is a lack of dialogue about the self, and possibly a dialogue or no dialogue, and just a feeling about everything else. So you, good sir, are the right-handed male kind. Okay? So how are you going to stay in that silence? I'm going to say it this way to you. Carlos was right-handed, and through the course of tensegrity, he allowed himself to create a very feminine brain. In fact, Carlos has said in several lectures that any male, or everybody, whether you're male or female, needs to leave this world in their feminine part. That doesn't mean you have to change to a feminine part. That doesn't mean that that all women have an easy way. No. But that we all go to infinity as the feminine aspect of ourselves. So, what Carlos did, even though he was born right-handed, through tensegrity, he created a dreaming brain like that of a female for himself. And that's why you have the books. He was able to capture all that right brain dreaming and give it language. Give it language. If you like the works of Carlos Castaneda, that could be a very simple practice for yourself. You're in silence for 20 minutes, you can last 20 minutes, awesome. Now, open your eyes, attempt to write down what this right brain sensation feeling was. Give yourself a vocabulary to speak of what you see, sense, and feel from your right brain. In giving yourself a vocabulary for your dreaming experiences, for your silence experiences, for your visioning, you will create this neuronal patterning for yourself. Because we all know that the brain is what scientists call plastic. It means that new neurons can be built, that we are not just what I was born to be, that the brain evolves, the brain grows, and every piece of consciousness, every new thing, I get build new neurons. So it's not so much you gaining more and more and more and more of this. What I'm suggesting you do is do the not doing which you probably cannot do so easily now. Create a language for this. Because as soon as you get to language now, my husband and my wife, oh, my job, oh, I have to take the car in, oh my God, I have to go to the cleaners, oh my God, I have to go to the vet, oh my God, I have to go to the grocery store, oh my God, my girlfriend's birthday is tomorrow. Repattern that. Give yourself a different language. Create what Carlos created for himself. Create the same thing for you. Create a dreaming language based upon your experience of your dreams. When you do that, as you do that, you'll be able to stay longer in silence, but you'll also develop possibly some, not human dialogue, but some other dialogues. So you can pick up some other forces in the universe. Okay? I hope that was understandable. Question 52. Ready?
Вопрос 52. Так, вопрос... Okay. Renata, you as an apprentice, and because you continue this lineage of sorcerers, you also create your group so that you could live burning from within?
No. No.
Нет.
Okay, all right. We will follow the way, more than likely, that Carlos died. We will not get liver cancer. But we will more than likely die as individuals. We may or may not burn from within. After we are dead, we have all put in our wills that we will get immediately cremated. If you don't burn from within, get yourself cremated, okay? Because what you want is all the energy of this put into your energy body. So no, we won't be going as a group, and we'll be going as individuals. And then maybe your next question is, wow, would we ever find Carlos on the other side? It's very, very clear that, I don't know how you say it. You know how the little animal, the snails, they leave such a very defined, glistening trail behind them as they walk through life? There's going to be signs in infinity where to go. And we will be able to resonate with them because they will have the signature of tensegrity and the signature of the Nawal. I think we might have time for one more question, unless we have more time.
Только еще на один вопрос. question about multiplicity. Is it possible to see or feel something which was felt by and seen by a different person who lived earlier, just by using the attention of recapitulation and directing it towards this person? And if yes, how can we possibly do that?
Okay, answer is yes. Of course you can. Okay.
Ответ да.
My question to you is, make sure you know why you want to do that. If this person is an ancestor, that would be great. If this person is not an ancestor of your family line, make sure you know why you want to do that, because you're tapping into an energy which may not be so akin to yourself. And there's a lot of forces in the universe, some which are friendly, some which are predatorial, and I just want you to make sure that when you hook into this person, that it's not a mental thing, oh, how cool am I, wow, I can really do this. Because if your body starts feeling any negative sensation by starting to do this, you need to back away. So, how do you do this? Not so hard. Same way you retrieve dreams in your sleeping dream, the same way that you go back into the sleeping dream from a waking state to a past dream that you've had. Get quiet, maybe do some tensegrity movements, make yourself silent, and like you already said, focus on that being, focus on that face, focus on that thing. And then, more than likely, you will probably feel a moment of merging, Maybe even like I said about when the two, how do you say it? When two lovers who are complete merge, you might feel this third space between you and this being. I would suggest that you don't go any further than the third space and you just feel them. You don't want complete possession. You really don't. And you can get enough information and enough sense of what this being is by just sharing, again, a third space with them. Okay? So, and then, because what we all need to understand is we are in this world living as physical beings. And when visitors come from other worlds that are non-physical come to visit us, we rule. We say yes and we say no. We say stop, we say go. We say closer, we say further. We say not so close, stay. They have to agree. On the other hand, if we ever get to their world with our energy body, with our physical body to their world, they rule. So, when you are in physical form encountering inorganic entities out here, be wise, be careful, do not do it because your ego thinks it's cool, and you always get to say yes or no, stop or go, or that's enough, this is enough. You can come this close and no further. Okay? So, I think that finishes our webinar. And, we, even though the last question was on multiplicity, I'm not so sure it was. If it was an ancestor, it was about a piece of your lineage. If it's something that's foreign to yourself, it might not be a piece of you at all. But since the word multiplicity was brought up in the upcoming event, retreat, out in nature, where it's sometimes easiest to find our completeness again, to again merge with our surroundings, the life around us, and feel infinity touch us from above and bless us from the earth below. We will work to regain this feeling of fullness and incorporate these pieces that are already ourselves, that are already pieces of ourselves, back to ourselves. I think I have described it also, that we will do a special exercise in here where we will make a mask of our ego self, and then we will adorn that mask with our vanity and our jealousy and our, anger and our tears and our etc. And all the colors we love and all the cars we want to own, and all the pieces of identity we can. And we're going to make that outside of ourselves, and then we're going to put it on, and we will feel how we feel in daily life. Then we take it off, and then we feel, oh my gosh, there's me again, big and full. And then we put it back on, and many of us will feel smaller, and we take it off, and we will feel full again. These kinds of practices are enduring. They don't leave very easily. And what tensegrity does over a space of time is that you acquire energy, acquire pieces of yourself, while recapitulating your life experiences. So one thing is going out, and another thing is going in. And so, after several years, you will be filled with more aspects of spirit and much more consciousness than when you began. So I think now it's my time to be quiet, and we're going to have a lovely person tell us about the Sudok workshop and how to register. And I thank you very much for your attention. I really enjoyed this session.